Welcome everyone to episode 10 of Hail Xal'atath. Manny, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. 10. Do you know what that means? I read that you've officially got a successful podcast when you reach 10. It shows that you've had commitment.
Well, we've had a certain amount of commitment.
Definitely. And we've spiced up things a little bit. People on the stream can now see what I'm playing. And for
Yes.
some godforsaken reason, I went into a delve.
Well, delves are good to stream too. I've discovered that myself.
All right, okay. I'll accept that. I got back into delves because I've done raiding. I've not wanted to do Mythic Plus because apparently Mythic Plus has been more toxic than it's ever been before.
Really?
And Blizzard has now started to ban people for like willfully bricking people's keys.
Oh, yeah,
Over and
because
over
people
and over.
do that.
Yeah. Like that's what the world has come to. The World of Warcraft has come to this. So with those options sort of done, I was like, okay, I guess now I'm at the point where I'm going to go and do delves again. So I did Vikraz and I one-shot him, and that's not because I'm good, that's just because I overgeared it. So I'll go back and do it again on the double question mark difficulty, and hopefully that will be more of a challenge, but I'm not going to do that during the stream. Not because I am afraid that people will see how bad I am, but because it'll be hard to carry on a conversation and also be screaming out, "Ah, damn it, he got me again!" So we'll keep that off of the stream.
I mean, I will say he kills me so quickly every time I try it that personally it would just be like I would spend more time down than up. I have not been able to kill him yet. It's pathetic. Like, I'm a BM hunter. You would think I'd be able to do any challenge, but alas, the double question mark still can't. The problem is he
Okay.
one-shots my pet.
Oh.
I've tried taking my pet off Growl. It doesn't help. I just die all the time.
Okay. I wonder if you can put your pet to like passive if it's becoming such an issue. Because like the trick, of course, would be if you can just keep him off your pet. Or maybe I there's no way you can do like a lone wolf of the other specs to do it, right?
Well, I've been trying to build up my survival spec. I still need a good weapon, though, to see if I can defeat him on that. But honestly, I'm so good at BM that I've only just started playing survival and marksman, and I'm terrible at both of them. So I tried the other day with survival, and it was like, no, I can last longer with the BM, and it's not the right spec to fight him with. But I'll get there. I'll get there. Probably just outgear it.
All right. I'm glad. I'm glad. And they're like, you know what? The fact that it is putting up that level of a challenge is encouraging to me because, like, yeah, like I know you don't normally want to get your face beat in. That's not what I come to WoW for. But I am definitely excited by the challenge. That's for sure.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I haven't actually sat down to really, really tackle it. I know that when I do decide to do that, I will be able to eventually defeat him. And I love that. I love having this big challenge just waiting for me. At the moment, I'm still in the stage where I go in every now and then, see how it is, go, oh, I'm dead, and leave. But I was the same with the mage towers, just a case of eventually you sit down and you're like, okay, now I'm going to kill this guy. Now I'm going to get this, I'm going to do this right. And it's so satisfying and so much fun. I mean, I've really enjoyed delves in general this season. And I know we're not talking about lore, and I very much apologize about that. We'll get there in a minute. But I've tried with Mythic Plus, and as you say, apparently it's so very toxic. Now, I don't really have that problem because I am in the Dungeon Dojo, and they're wonderful and will take you and let you be terrible and not moan at you and tell you how stupid you are. But I still don't enjoy a challenge where other people are going to be punished because of me doing badly. I mean, to an extent, because I love raiding. But with Mythic Plus, it's not what I want. It's not what I'm looking for in the game. I keep thinking I'm going to try get into it. But I really have enjoyed delves a lot, and I still do them, even though I'm actually at the stage where I can't really get much more from delves. Unfortunately, getting gilded crests is such a roll of the dice. It is so infuriating. Like at the beginning, you could get those maps quite often, and they would give you the extra chest, and you got good gear and gilded crests from those. But these days, I'm seeing one of those maps about once every 2-3 weeks, and that's if I'm doing delves a lot. It really sucks.
Oh.
I wish they would give us maybe just harder delves that reward the gilded crests. But I understand that they're worried about people just not doing Mythic Plus at all then, because, hey, I wouldn't.
I think at a certain point, if delves reward too much, people check out of any content that doesn't reward at the same level.
Yeah.
And then it's not so much about the delves and how good or bad they might be. It's just about the rewards, right? Like, I'd love for delves to get to a balanced level where they would reward nicely. But, like, right now, the speed at which you get rewards from delves is just ridiculous. It is so fast when the rewards are irrelevant, that I think it's the same issue Raiders had with Mythic Plus is the same issue that Mythic Plus players are now having with delves. They're like, why would I do normal raiding if I can get all this loot from Mythic Plus, and I feel like I need to do Mythic Plus because that's the way to gear. And now it's the same thing with delves, where it's like, why would I do anything up to a 6+? Because I'm guaranteed to get the gear in the delve, and it's only a chance in the Mythic Plus, and there's all that stress going into the Mythic Plus. Like you said, the balance of how much responsibility I have to other people in a raid where I can have up to like 29 other people, and I could just get lost in the shuffle, versus if there's only 2 other DPS and I've now taken out 30% of the DPS and 20% out of the total amount of people. Oh man, and everybody notices it because it's only just the 5 of us. I think that's the kind of stress that happens in pugging. And so when I was with like a static team, I loved Mythic Plus, and I would say I would definitely suggest to people, if you can get that friends group, like if you're in the dojo, like see if you can play with the same people at the same time each week, and then build that into like a static team, because then you're gonna grow together. You're not like worried about pissing off some random person. It's like, it's George, and I played like how many times with George, and George has been helping me with my healing rotation, and I've been helping George figure out how to like tank this one spot. And then your successes are shared, your losses are shared, and so like it feels better altogether. Wow, I'm gonna have to do this quicker because I'm not paying attention. But yeah, like I think just a static team would be the way to go.
Absolutely. I mean, if I do end up spending some more time trying to get into Mythic Plus, I certainly plan to do it with, the people I know. It's the only way that I've done any Mythic Plus at all is with the dojo. But, being able to organize a team, being able to find time every week with the same people, it's difficult. And that is one of the reasons why they introduced delves, is not everyone's schedule, it's just not going to work for everyone. And for me, it feels like I know that I could probably get into Mythic Plus if I want to. I just got to sit down and do it again. But I want delves to be more satisfying for players like me who do want to raid up to heroic, but don't want to do mythic. And I feel like there must be some sort of balance. I wish I could say what the solution would be, because I do realize it's this huge problem that you end up with all these people doing the delves because now they feel like they have to. So you kind of... It's very tricky. It's very difficult to get that balance right. This is why I generally discuss lore and not game mechanics.
Okay. Well, you know what? We've got some lore to discuss this week. And you know what? If you really want to like go into a big conversation about delves, I had that conversation on my other show for Azeroth, so I might as well plug that now. Because we had a big conversation about delves in the last episode, and the episode before we had a bit of a conversation about balancing the rewards and what's making everything so difficult. And so I definitely suggest that. But as I was saying, we just had a bunch of lore drop on us in the live game, and we've got some developments on the PTR, which means that there's stuff coming soon. So I'd love to start talking about the discs.
Absolutely. So let's start talking about the disc. To recap, before this week's questline, what we've been doing is we've been gathering these discs, Titan discs, that have memories encoded on them, and slowly watching them one by one with Dagran the Second and Speaker Brinth, the Earthen. And so far it's been very sort of a slow drip kind of situation where it's a little bit of amazing lore at a time. We've learned that the world soul at the middle of our planet isn't just a world soul, it is something called the prime world soul. We've learned that the Titans, before, the Titans used to always claim that all world souls are Titan world souls. And now we've learned that actually the Titans go around making sure that world souls become Titan world souls. So that's a change in language that's very significant, because it confirms the theory that I've been one of the people who believed it for some time. Yes, our world soul is a prime world soul. We learned that all these Titan installations around Azeroth, like Uldum and Ulduar and all of that, they're all part of this giant thing called the Manifold. It wraps around the entire planet, and we learned that the Titans discovered shards of light all over the planet. We think Beladar is one of them. I'm pretty sure the shard of light that's in Season of Discovery is another one, and it looks like the shard of light that we all see in Siren's Isle is a third one, but that's not really confirmed yet, as far as I know. But these shards of light are also chunks of World Soul, which is very confusing, because does that mean that our World Soul is actually a light being, or does it mean the light is trying to infect the World Soul the same way the Titans are? What's going on there? And then finally, we got to this week's quest line.
Yes. And this week's quest line, again, go out there, collect your 100 discs, go back, and you get another entry from our keeper friend. And so this one felt like kind of the final chapter of bringing things together, especially with like the way that the characters react. It wasn't just like questions, it was just like, let's hammer home this importance here. And so I gotta ask you, I guess let's actually say what happened. So I'll give that to you, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay, well, in a bit as well, I can go show it. We can go on the stream and show the record as well for anyone who hasn't seen it. But to recap it so far, first of all, the Titans, we already knew about the manifold, and we suspected that the manifold is a prison for the world soul. And there's been a lot of talk about prisons. And basically, it seems to have been confirmed that it's not just the manifold. They have actually wrapped a prison around our world soul. They don't call it that, but they show like a device that's wrapped around the world soul to protect it, is their story. And, this is something I think we learned last time, is some of the earthen who turned diamond, they're called the Thragar. And the earthen, as far as they are aware, the Thragar were great, powerful members of their society. They were extremely honored. In fact, at the beginning of the War Within, when we first arrive in Khazal-Gar, the only reason the one earthen has time of day for us is because he sees Magni, and he goes, "Oh, Magni must be a Thragar because he's made out of diamond." So the earthen, we already know about these Thragar, but they tell us that the Thragar all died out long ago. Now we find out that actually the Titans viewed this diamond change to be a bad infection, but it was done by the world soul itself. The earthen, spending too much time around the world soul, Azeroth reached out to them and turned them to diamond, the same way that she did with Magni. And then these Thragar started disobeying the Titans' orders and trying to dismantle the prison around the world soul. And the Titans saw this as a bad thing, and so decided that we can't have earthen around the world soul anymore because they get infected. And they wiped the earthen's memories, and they set up this the machine that they use to store their memories, specifically so that they can overwrite them to make them forget all this stuff about the Thragar and the world soul and all of that, and instead keep them loyal and following the Titans' edicts and not questioning them. So this is a big shock for Speaker Brinth, because she's not one of the Unbound. She was one of the earthen who was loyal to the Titans and has been loyally following their orders this whole time. And now she finds out that the Titans were basically messing with their memories, which has caused them a whole bunch of problems because the machine that they used to preserve their memories was broken, and they've lost a whole bunch of them. So now she's very upset. And it does seem very clear that Azeroth was trying to reach out to these earthen specifically to get them to release her from this prison, in the same way that she reached out to Magni specifically to get him to help her when she was wounded by the sword of Sargeras.
Yes, and it's crazy because it's not only like, okay, your memories were taken from you, the Titans were controlling you. They also threw in the edicts as well. And the edicts were specifically to make sure that they were dependent upon the machine. So like their entire shutdown protocol, right, is a mechanism of control to like make sure that they get reset. And I think that was brilliant because one of the quests that made me absolutely cry was when we have our one earthen that ends up shutting down because he reaches that point, and to find out that shutdown is actually not necessary, that it was a function of the edicts themselves that like push them towards this like, hey, you haven't gone and cleared out your memory, so we're gonna shut you down rather than have you have autonomy. Right? That's powerful. That is like amazing writing on Blizzard's part. And like immediately makes me just like cry for the fate of these earthen. All these people, all these earthen that have like undergone the shutdown and have had this painful experience, and the ones that have survived, and lost their friends for nothing?
And so it's the same realization that we all have to pretty much go through that's happening over and over again, is these cosmological forces don't care about us. They actually don't. It's the same thing the Earthen are realizing. Another powerful moment was at the end of the main quest line, when the Earthen decide they have to work together, even though it goes against the edicts, for the sake of this war against Xal'atath. And a Titan Forged comes out of the ocean and tries to wipe them out. It's a shock. It's like God suddenly sending down an angel to smite you for like no reason. And they're very, very, very upset by it. But now they're going to be even more upset with these revelations. I mean, they're going through a crisis of faith. It reminds me a lot of the whole thing with the light, because with the light, they've actually come to terms with the fact that the light is not moral. It's powerful, but it doesn't make moral judgments. And that used to be a heretical belief in the Church of Light, where people were actually excommunicated for that belief. But then because of the Scarlet Crusade, I think people saw that the light still came from them, and they realized, no, it is true. The light doesn't actually have a moral center. It's just down to conviction. The Church of Light has still managed to go forward. I mean, people who know that about the light still manage to have a deeply personal relationship with the light, and it's still deeply meaningful. So maybe they can have some advice actually for the Earthen and those who followed the Titans, who are now realizing that the Titans don't actually care about you. They don't care about any of us.
That would be a strange... I'm not sure if World of Warcraft would ever go through that, but I could see like a story where it is like Anduin and all of our Lightforged and I, and of course we would have to have the Prophet Velen, and they kind of have that like, do I still follow the light, and some of them are on what side? That almost feels like an alliance civil war in a way. That would be something else. But that's an aside. I do think that like they laid out these pieces in front of us, and I did not see it. I thought oh, the Earthen have to shut down. That's a cool thing that they added. But we've never seen the other Earthen that we've met in like all the other different places have anything like this. And then those Earthen weren't working on the World Soul, so they wouldn't have to have this. And I never pieced it together that this is why these Earthen are special. This is why this entire thing wasn't needed anywhere else. Like that to me it was like, if I had thought about it more, if I hadn't just been like, well, this is the MacGuffin for this race, and actually posed that questions, and I haven't seen those questions posed by other people, but like to have it come out like that, it really made me go like, okay, you know what, Blizzard, you are actually thinking about the writing a little bit more, and I gotta go back through with a fine-tooth comb.
I've got to say, it's very clever how they packaged that actually, because yes, it's true that we've never seen any other Earthen do this with their memories. But, you know, Earthen are a new race in a new expansion. We're very used to these new ideas being packaged in with, oh, now... Yeah, so like you just sort of assume this is just something they wrote to give these Earthen a little bit of flavor. It's really cool that actually, if we had examined that a bit more, we might have thought, why are these Earthen? Why do they have to use this memory machine? We might have thought about that a bit more. The only thing I did pick up on before we got this quest was the fact that the Earthen are being kept away from the World Soul specifically. I thought that was really interesting. There is a book it's in Isle of Dawn, and it's from it's not Speaker Prince. Who's the leader of the Unbound? Aldegon. You can find her journal in her village, and her journal mentions that they're building this causeway. They maintain the causeway. It's their job, but they're not allowed down the causeway. And Aldegon's like, why? Why can't we go down the causeway? What's happening down there? Are there other earthen there? And I thought that's a very interesting, like, restriction. Why keep the earthen away specifically, especially considering the fact that they have to build the thing? And now, of course, we know.
And you could think that it's just like, oh, the Titans keeping their secrets. That's like restricted information. There's all these chambers and Titan facilities where it's like, access denied, I will kill anybody who comes close, sort of stuff. And it could have been one of those. But this fits in to the lore in such a great way. I love that it is a new realization, but then everything leading up to it just makes it fit. And that's why I pause so much on this. But there's another thing that I go like, huh, and I start questioning about like past things. I'm going to go right back to BFA. We have our speaker of Azeroth sitting right beside Mother, and they're working side by side. And I think to myself, what did Mother know or not know? Where does her loyalties lie? And she was in this Chamber of Heart right beside a corrupt, basically the first corrupted earthen, the first Thragar that we've had in forever. And she worked hand in hand with it. I guess we had a bigger purpose, but is she doing something now? And so that like makes me immediately go like, what's Mother up to? Are we gonna see Mother? And like, did she do anything untowards while we weren't looking? Like there's like, it becomes an immediate thing that they could call back to. And I love that.
I mean, it's really interesting because the ending of the quest, Arcades, who is the Titan Forged, who's made these records and who's telling us these stories, at the end of his record, he goes, I don't really know why I made this. He's basically like, I'm not sure why I wrote this down. I wasn't supposed to. I was specifically told not to write it down. And he sort of goes, maybe it wasn't just the earthen who were affected by the world soul. So that suggests that she's managed to get to the keeper, which again suggests that that's what's happened to Mother. I mean, it makes sense, being in the chamber of the heart, that she's also basically a corrupted Titan Forged. That would be... But this now does make me really curious, because there's this weird alliance between the light and the Titans, and I can't decide exactly where it fits and how, you know, who's in on it. But like, Titan keepers who have light powers are not unusual. We already discussed Odin follows the light, but obviously Keeper Tyr as well is the keeper of paladins, you know. So this does again almost suggest the world soul could be a light creature, which I hope it's not. I wouldn't like it, but it is possible. That could explain what's happened to some of these keepers, is that they've been affected by Azeroth, and that's given them the light powers. It's a thought.
Well, my thoughts are that different aspects of the world soul could, in fact, be expressed differently. The fact that there are so many world trees that can pop up could be an expression of her life energies, and the crystals are her light energies, and so forth, right? We know that, like, there's so much arcane power in the Well of Eternity, right? And that is from Azeroth. So that does show that she does have some order to her, right? Because, like, it's literally a big gaping wound that became the Well of Eternity, that was the source of all this arcane power that gave magic to the elves. And so clearly there's arcane within Azeroth. I was saying on our last episode, and I felt that like this was something that was kind of crazy to come together, but as we saw 11.1 and the different images on there, we saw a lot of constructs and ruins of Titan facilities being like devoured by the same sort of creep that you see around in Ashkahet, where I want to say that one of the reasons that the goblins have had such scientific marvels is because they didn't reach the world soul. They instead reached close to the manifest. And so when we go to Undermine, there will be some Titan devices and stuff. We won't need to go into another Titan facility because all of that stuff will have been incorporated into the Undermine city itself. That's why it's such a mecca of technology and such, right? And that helps pull it in to like what the main story is. What do you think of that?
I definitely think, well, first of all, I think your interpretation that the world soul manifests in the different forces because it basically contains them all, I think that makes the most sense, because the prime world soul, it's obviously bigger than just one cosmological force. It doesn't make sense that it would be limited to one force. I think it's really intriguing, the idea of goblins getting their technology from the Titans. It's quite hilarious to think of the Titans behind goblin technology, considering what goblin technology looks like. I mean, boy, that really is taking order and just injecting a good amount of disorder on top of it.
I mean, it could be not that they meant to do it, but rather that the goblins started backwards engineering, which is why their technology is so unstable, because they don't have they didn't build the foundations and build up. They just like copied the homework and didn't quite copy the homework right.
Which would be perfect, because that would probably result in disorderly inventions.
Yeah, we've seen a bunch of Titan things that aren't quite working, and they spark, and it's like, uh-oh, that's unstable. Well, that's just goblin technology to a T.
Oh man, do you think we could end up solving the World Soul Saga by a goblin just whacking the manifold in the right place with a hammer, making it explode?
That would be that would be a very heroic moment, kind of like what Mechatork got in BFA, where it's like, you gotta disable them, you gotta blow up the ships, we're all dead. It's like, press the button, Mechatork.
Yes. If there are buttons down there, we've got to keep the goblins and the gnomes away from them until we know what they do.
I mean, you gotta remember, the famous big red button was in Ulduar. So clearly the Titans know a thing or two about making big red buttons you shouldn't press.
Listen, I've got my character in this area now. Do you want me to just play the... should we just play that?
Yeah. Let's play it out.
Let me just... There we go. Oh, I should probably put the sound on.
You have my focus.
The 5th log entry.
May the deeps continue.
With the danger posed by the rogue Thragar, the great Amon Thul ordered the rebellion to be quelled, and the Thragar hunted down until the threat was neutralized. However, the issue of earthen malfunction under the influence of the World Soul's energies remained, and so a new solution was devised. The earthen of Khaz-Algar will relinquish their memories into an archive to preserve recorded data and purge the influence of the World Soul's energies. By initiating this protocol on a regular cadence, we will ensure the Thragar malfunction does not take hold again. To secure compliance, the Titans have programmed edicts into the operational earthen to regulate and enforce their discrete functions and efficiency. Thus, the earthen will maintain the integrity of the coreway and the machines of Xal'atath. Should the edicts be broken, more permanent failsafes have been set into place. With these difficulties behind them, the Titans have declared that the World Soul remains, dreaming, safely contained within the World Core, where no harm will come to it. I do not know why I commit this information to the archive, why I risk its discovery in the future. Perhaps the World Soul's influence does not extend solely to the earthen.
What we've learned here, it calls the entire history of Azeroth into question. What if our history isn't what they said it was?
So the Keepers stole our memories and let us believe that it was for our own good? That it was so we could continue to fulfill our purpose? No, not even our purpose. We built the greatest structures the world has ever seen, and they set us to become maintenance drones. Just cogs in a machine.
And it does seem that they did it to keep you complacent, obedient, following their edicts, and eliminating those of you they couldn't control.
Those edicts, they were bonds of servitude, and we never even knew. And then when the sundering happened, we were cut off from all of it. And Arcadis never returned to help us. Why didn't he return? Our entire history, our culture, held in that archive. I want my memories back. I want all our memories back. Damn the Titans.
I'm starting to think there's more to the World Soul than the Titans wanted us to know. That they had other plans for it, and Azeroth, than we were led to believe. What if all of us, even Arcadis himself, have been deceived?
I just have to point out how great I think this one thing is. Speaker Brinth, she is like the one earthen who she talks very much like this, very mechanical, very boring. In fact, even Taliesin and Avatar had a video about things that you hate about WoW, and one of the things was Speaker Brinth, and they blamed it on maybe she was told how to do her voice early on, and then they realized how boring that sounds, and so they got all the other earthen to sound a bit more animated when they talk. But I think it was for this, because she starts sounding animated in this particular questline. She starts, you hear the emotion in her voice, where she's like, damn the Titans, and what happened to Arcadis. And it's such a beautiful moment, because you can see her going away from that cog in a machine to become the person that she is. And there's one other thing that I think they did that is beautiful. I'm sure they did this on purpose now. When I did the analysis for the War Within cinematic, you know, the one where it's the three creatures, so it's the earthen, it's the Haranir, and it's Farron. Yeah. And it's like the music, you know, and it's flashes between them. And Farron we know, and the Haranir's name we know. I'm blanking on it right now, but we know her name, we've met her. And the earthen we don't know. And I spent ages trying to find that earthen, because I thought surely they've used one of the characters, because they have with the other two. but there isn't. It's not any of the named characters we know. And I realized that's done on purpose because the Earthen are just cogs in a machine. And that's what you see him doing like making the machine go, basically, pulling chains.
Yeah.
And this poor Earthen in this introduction, where there are plenty of Earthen with names and recognizable faces, they just put in the random cog in the machine because that's what their purpose is in life. That's what the Titans did to them. I think that's so beautiful that they did it, like, even in that cinematic, that's they're putting an emphasis on this is how the Earthen are treated and how we find them. And then we get to watch them basically be the people that they are. In a sense, it's similar to the Drakthir story in that they were made for this purpose, but they're actually, they're just people. They're just not humans, but they're just people who want to live and experience life. And I love it.
You mentioning the Drakthir immediately, like, makes me go, like, man, having, like, the Drakthir be beside them to be like, hey, yeah, we were built for a purpose too. We've had to find our own purpose. Let's help you in this conversation because, like, we just have begun exploring this, and maybe we can help you a bit with, like, the first steps as we know it. That would be great. That would be an entire thing of, like, oh, let's send a delegation to Valdrakken. Let's have some of the scale commanders show up here and have that kind of conversation and show that that similarity. But, like, unfortunately, I feel this is something Blizzard does all the time. We're out of Dragonflight, so we're not going to hear anything from, like, the Drakthir.
Although we might still, because that said, we have seen the Niffin, like, they clearly wanted to use them again. And it certainly is, as you say, it makes sense narratively. It's one thing if it wouldn't, but it really does. Like, if anyone can help them come to terms with a similar experience, it's the Drakthir. And while the Drakthir, it was Neltharion was a dragon who was created by the Titans, and there's still very much Titan lore in the Drakthir story. It's also old gods as well, obviously, but it's still, there's a lot that happened in Dragonflight that is still relevant to the War Within that I think we will be seeing. I mean, it would be crazy, I think, for example, for us to go the entire expansion and not see anything of Keeper Tyr again, especially now that we've got this Arcadus Keeper where he clearly became something of a rebel. And Aldegon, I just told you, Aldegon was the person who said, it wasn't Aldegon, sorry, it was Speaker Prince. But still, Aldegon said, why did they keep the Earthen away from the World Soul? And now we know that asking that question was important. And Speaker Prince said, what happened to Arcadus? Which I feel is a question we're going to get answered at some point. What did happen to Arcadus?
Yeah. They've been teasing the old keepers that were working with them for a while, both in the betrayal, they, like, decided to quarantine us, or they, like, the ones that were on the other side of the aisle, that they're like, shut it down and never let any of them come here again. And I think we're definitely going to go back to that spot and find out more about it, and, like, they're going to get their memories back, and, like, maybe that's going to be an entire walking around this stretch, and, like, she recounts, like, the first insurrection or something like that. Because that part of the isle is, like, criminally underused, and I think that's on purpose.
I think you're right.
So I'm looking forward to it. I think that there's going to be a lot, story-wise, that's going to happen there. I also just think that because there's all of that to happen, it's more likely, unfortunately, that they're not going to go back to the past races because they're too busy with the internal interactions. But you're right; they've brought people back before. They haven't forgotten about other things as well, because we also have the stuff that happened with Dalaran in here. And like, unless there's another facet that you want to explore with this, I'd love to talk about that as well.
Let's talk about Dalaran. Now, I have to say, I did the Dalaran quest a couple weeks ago, and Noble mentioned that apparently it's been changed, so it's not all the same. And I tried to go do it today, but I couldn't find it. I don't know if it's still on the PTR or if I just forgot how to start it.
It is in the PTR, but like I also did it earlier, so we may be speaking from a little bit of outdated information here.
Well, I think the quest itself is still the same. There's maybe a slight change in the conversations that they have. And I know that one of the conversations you couldn't even do properly, you couldn't even witness it properly when I did the quest. I had to go to Wildhead to read the conversation because they had it from the data file. So I imagine that's the one that's probably been changed.
Okay.
So let's start off with what happens in the quest line. Do you want to take this?
Sure. So, of course, we are talking with Khadgar, and he says that the Archmage Romanoff has been unable to sleep, has been stressed out of his mind, has been just basically traumatized from like what has happened with Dalaran. And so we are sent out to talk him down and find out what is going on with him. And I think this is great. This is like, obviously, when like such a huge thing happens, so much destruction, yeah, not everybody gets to like just completely move forward like the heroes of Jaina or well, I mean Khadgar is definitely wounded, but like this is more the emotional wounds, the hurt that happened from it. And of course, as soon as we get into this conversation, Zekvar decides to show up and say, I'm going to kill you too. So we'll see if I can carry on the conversation and kill Zekvar. Nope, I'm going to get feared. Because it's a lot to have your entire home, everything you knew. Oh, I'm dead. Everything you knew just completely decimated. And to at the same time lose so many people. It was an absolute tragedy. And so I'm really glad that WoW is showing the effects of that tragedy. And so Romanoff is not in his living his best life, we'll say. He is traumatized. He is just unable to even send a letter to people to get them to do some sort of commemoration, to get them to come, because he doesn't know what words to say. And so you have to select the words, and that shows you how stuck he is. And then once you do that, you send off the missives, and he asks you to do some things. You do those, you come back, he's like, well, people still haven't come. I guess it was too much to expect. He shows that isolation. And then, well, lo and behold, here comes the blue dragon aspect, Kaligos, and he's like, hey, people can't make it here that quickly. That's why they're taking so long. Let's do things. And so he sends you on some quests. And that leads to you coming across one of the more infamous members of Dalaran and the oh man, the Kirin Tor. Wow, I blanked on that name for too long. The Kirin Tor, which is Kel'Thuzad, at least a shade of Kel'Thuzad that was locked away in this cursed amulet. And so you get to explore the problems that the Kirin Tor have had. And Kel'Thuzad, strangely, with his, antagonistic way, does talk about, what the Kirin Tor meant to him. And what the Kirin Tor meant to many people, because he's not the only person who has done this sort of thing. And then you go back, and you then get to speak with Jaina on another quest. And Jaina's quest talks about, the creation of the mana bomb, and how that was done with Kirin Tor knowledge, and even the further study of the mana bomb felt like a mistake, and now a near disaster could happen because this has fallen into the Nerubian hands, the wrong hands. And so the entire quest is this really organic way of speaking of the history of the Kirin Tor, the way they haven't quite corrected the mistakes of the past and continue to, in some ways, compound those mistakes. And then you get back after doing all of this, and we have the conversation of where the Kirin Tor wants to go in the future. And I want to stop it there because, like, I'd like to discuss, like, the quest itself. So what did you think of the quest?
So when I played the quest, we had just found out that player housing had been announced. And my biggest reaction because of that was Pocket Dimension House. Because it takes you into a pocket dimension house. Like, tell me that's not on purpose. That's gotta happen. We're gonna get a bag that's a house at some point. I really, really like Calthazard's sense of style. But that said, there were things about the questline that actually kind of made me sad. The main thing that I'm disappointed with is it actually made me realize how badly they handled the destruction of Dalaran, specifically how they announced it. Because the way we found out Dalaran was getting destroyed was when the PTR or the beta stuck. You start on the shores of Xal'atath during when the Isle of Dawn storyline hit the beta in the ruins of Dalaran. And they're going, oh yeah, Dalaran just crashed. Dalaran's destroyed. And that's how we found out. That was literally the big reveal. And then they sort of played around it with a lot of, don't say Dalaran is destroyed, but Dalaran was destroyed. And I think they did it that way because they didn't really want people to be too shocked when it happened. But at the same time, I think finding out that way really took the emphasis out of it when it happened, because I just didn't feel it. And when you play through the questline, you realize that was a huge deal. That was a massive, massive deal. And I feel like we should have had, I don't know, there should have been something that at the time it should have felt bigger, even if it was something that upset people. I think everyone finding out at the same time when the quest is live, instead of everyone finding out because someone on the beta found out, I just think would have been better.
Well, I don't think there was a way to do the ruins of Dalaran, to show the destruction of Dalaran, and test the first region.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Right?
I mean, also the issue is, like, what, are you going to write Dalaran out of the entire quest line? Because then you're basically saying it had no impact, which is also unfortunate.
Yeah. And so going into my background a little bit, okay? I was part of the early access alpha, had to sign the NDA and everything. Couldn't talk about what I was seeing on that until they did the big reveal and they opened the curtains, and then all the content creators got to, like, say, like, oh goodness, this is stuff. And I specifically did not talk about Dalaran, but it was obvious from the testing. You start off in digging yourself out from under the ruins of this destroyed city. There's no way to avoid it. But I didn't talk about it. I also talk with a lot of people who don't listen to my shows, and maybe it hurts my friendship a little bit, but it happens anyways. They are not tuned in that hard on Wowhead, and so for them it was an absolute surprise. They played and they're like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, they blew up. Was that a hallucination? I'm like, nope, keep playing. Right? It was a thing. And so I do get reminded that there's not everybody is as plugged into the game as you and I and the people who obviously listen to our show. So it still did have an effect for a portion of the audience. And for the portion that it didn't have the effect, I think that this quest helps get that landing a little bit better. Do I wish that this quest line was a bit earlier? Yes and no. I think that it, like, if this got lost in the shuffle of the level up campaign,
that would be a shame.
Wouldn't quite exactly. And so 11.0.5 has not had any story. This is the first time they've had a story focused patch since the launch. And so I think this is kind of the earliest they could have given it the stage that it deserved. But time-wise, it feels a little bit behind. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think they could have maybe introduced it a little bit earlier. But yeah, as you say, like, when would it, like, if they had introduced it with the anniversary patch, I guess it would have gotten a little lost in all the anniversary stuff.
Yeah. Like, if they did it as a time-gated quest that, like, is like, hey, this unlocks after week 6 or something, or, like, once you've defeated, the queen and you've gotten through, Nubarar Palace, whether on story mode or any other difficulty, then this quest unlocks. Because, like, as long as that quest line was going, that feels like the priority. That feels like, well, Jaina can't pull herself away to do that. Khadgar hasn't been returned, so he can't have his part in that story. Like, it in terms of priority of, like, oh shoot, we've been ignoring Archmage and he's been, like, stressed out of his mind for so long, he's not well. Like, that to me, in terms of timeline, makes that impact worse for him and makes it feel like, wow, like, we should have been here sooner. And I think that the only way that you keep that intact and have this delivered any sooner is specifically to make it a quest that's gated behind, like, defeating Queen Ansarak. But I also think that that would have also been data mined anyway, so we would have still been at the similar situation where it's like, oh, and this data mine quest, and Blizzard, why are you holding this back? Stop time gating.
But the thing is, I appreciate what you're saying about how you wouldn't have been able to hide the destruction of Dalaran with the quest line, the main quest line. And I do really enjoy the fact that the War Within story literally starts with you trapped under rubble. I think that's such a great way to begin a story. It's one of the funniest cold openings because some poor mage comes to try help you and he gets killed by a Nerubian.
Oh, yeah.
It's awful. It's very funny. I wouldn't want to change that. But I do still think they could have built up to it better. Specifically, they should have just done a better pre-patch event. It should have been a whole event that maybe ended with the destruction of Dalaran, or at least with Dalaran on its way to Khazal-Gar as the ending. To at least... And I'd like to have seen more from the Council of Six and from the Kirin Tor leading up to the War Within. I mean, there was so much questing they could have done before the War Within. And I suppose they didn't have time to build those quests, but we've already discussed in a different episode how much of a difference and an impact a good pre-patch can be. And one with, like, good quests and everything, like how much of a difference that can make. And I think this is one of those cases where if they'd had, like, dedicated quest lines that were very much centered around Dalaran and the Kirin Tor specifically, and ended at least with Dalaran flying, that would have been something. It would have also maybe allowed us to lead up to what we want to get into now, is how that quest line ends and the conversations at the end of it, because some of it does feel a little bit like it hasn't been prepped properly. At least I think.
I mean, I agree in some parts. I don't know. I agree with how it stands now. I will agree with how it stands now. I genuinely think that the problem can be addressed in the future. Like, you can go back, but it would have been better if it had been done ahead of time, especially considering like how we got here and how that could have been introduced. So again, all story is a little bit interconnected. So I want to talk about like part of the reveal that led to destruction of Dalaran. We had a returning archmage that turned out to be Xal'atath in disguise. And I think it would have been great if you wanted to focus on the Council of Six. That is like, oh, the Council of Six, they're all scattered. They're all scattered. If we're going to like take the fight to Xal'atath, we need to gather everybody. And so, of course, you go to the Dragon Isles, you get Khadgar. You speak with all of these different archmages, and you gather them up. Jaina, Dadgar, and, of course, Xal'atath in disguise as just one of them. And you wouldn't even notice, and then you would feel bad because you were the one who brought... but the hero always does this, right?
Yeah, that would be like, that would be very funny if we were the ones who made that mistake. Because, like, as it was, I just saw them going, oh, it's so good to see you again. And I was like, that's suspicious. But nobody listens to me.
Oh, no. I was, like, walking past, handing in the quest, and I was streaming this, so I could, like, go to my stream, and, like, there was this talk, and I'm like, hold up, and I, like, literally stopped walking to hand in the quest. I'm like, hold up. Oh, come on, Blizzard, you are tipping your hand on this one. Right? So, like, yeah, if you were paying attention, yes, it was there. And I think you could have made it more impactful while also simultaneously being a little bit more subtle. If getting that mage was one of the quests, right? And it could have been like the near penultimate quest where it's like, okay, hero, the next one's hard because there's been rumors about his death, but I've heard that he's actually alive and in seclusion. And so you have to go out to like, I don't know, Duskwood or something, and you find him there, working on stuff, and he's just like, oh, and each of them talks again about like Dalaran and what it meant to them and why they've stepped away from it and everything. Right?
Yes.
And so you have what they were talking about here being introduced ahead of time. You have this entire rally, let's get the band back together moment, right? The archmage that helps you along the way can be this like little wet behind the ears apprentice mage. It's like, oh, I'm really glad to be working alongside the hero, and it's really great. I'm going to tell my kids about this, and my partner about this, and then the next time you meet them, they're digging you out of the rubble. Hold on, hero, I got you. Click. Oh, baby, that's how you hurt people.
Oh my word, that would be so awful and perfect.
That would be so great, because it's this little guy that you met along the pre-quest that you're like, oh, okay,
God,
yeah, no, I'm glad that you're my hero. Yeah, don't worry. Here's my autograph. You told them you got to hang out with Discordian K. It's okay. You know what? Here's a little Felstone. Give your kid some candy. Right?
Oh my word.
I still got that Hellstone you gave me at Discordian K. Click. It's not working. Tell my kids I love them. Click.
Oh my word. I'm not sure how well that would go down. I would love it, but
I mean, I think we would all love it. It would be
shocking.
Hitting you. Yeah, you're hitting people on the big level of like, oh my goodness, Dalaran's destroyed, and I am partially responsible for this.
Well, that's the thing.
So you then... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's the thing, is like, it just feels a bit like it's such a big thing to have happened, and everyone feels this guilt and is like there's a lot of soul searching that's happening among the characters, and it would just be better if you felt like you should soul search a bit yourself as well.
Yeah, because you'd be immediately empathizing with Illyria, because you'd be like, oh, shoot, Illyria's saying she should have seen it coming. I was the one who brought him to the city, right? Oh man, the city's destroyed. We just got all these people and the effort it took to get them back together, and they could have all been safe in their homes or wherever they were if I hadn't done that. And hey, this kid who was following me around and had such a bright future and was talking about his family or her family, like, you know, like I'm projecting at this point, but like their family and their partner and everything, right? And like, oh, they were so light and funny and they didn't deserve this. Yeah, they were like a little kid. And then they die trying to help you from the mess that you helped cause. It just hit us on all fronts. Hey, Blizzard, if you want a quest designer, just let me know. Let me know.
I'd vote for you.
Yay!
So
yeah.
the way it ends, the conversations which may or may not be outdated.
Yeah. So they decide that they have had all of these issues with, of course, Dalaran in the past, and for so long they were not doing their due diligence to make sure that they were actually correcting the mistakes. And Romanoff says that, like, well, you know what? For so long, Dalaran has been this like crazy city, and I've never really like this thought that like the Kirin Tor could be fallible, right? And so they decide that rather than being this like city off in the sky, they are instead going to be boots on the ground with everybody else, with the common people, and they're gonna fight as a organization that is like kind of decentralized.
Yeah.
If you are a comic book fan, this is similar to what DC did with the Justice League. They did this Infinite Crisis event, big event, and the Justice League decided that instead of being ground-based in this hall that was in one country, you can guess which country it was, they would instead have a big satellite space station and be like not connected to one nation and give justice and protect the entire world. And then the writers didn't like that, and they're like, well, rather than lording above everybody, we're instead going to once again come down to the ground and be like in amongst the people we're trying to save. So yes, they had a ground base, but instead of having it in one place, they had multiple locations all over the world so that they could be among the people. And I think that's kind of where Blizzard is going with, so that you will have like all these people who are part of the Kirin Tor, but they will be in Silvermoon, they will be in Stormwind, they will be all over trying to like research and better magic and apply that betterment to the society as a whole. I think this could only work in a post Shadowlands BFA era where the Horde and the Alliance are no longer at odds, as like in a unsteady relationship, but in a relationship all the same. Right? I think that if you need to sort of have the Kirin Tor separated out in a world where the faction war was still flaring up.
So my biggest issue with it, is them claiming that they're not going to have Dalaran floating in the sky again. I very much object to that. They must put it back in the sky, and they must put my house in it. And I will beat that drum until Dalaran is back in the sky and I have a house in it. Because you can't introduce player housing and then say, but you're not going to have a house in the most famous floating city in the game. You can't do that. No, sorry.
Oh my.
Dalaran has to come back. It's got to come back. It's got to fly again, and you got to have a house in it. People have pointed out that the fact that they're talking about rebuilding Dalaran, but potentially on the ground, this probably got to do with player housing. But still, I want it in the sky. None of this, we want to have our feet on the ground, be among the common people. You know what? I don't care. I don't want good leaders anymore. I'm sick of them. We've got all these wonderful councils everywhere who are all good. I don't want that. I want some up in the air, out of touch mages with a floating city, and I'm not interested in this alternative. But the other thing is, I don't understand what they're talking about when they're going, yes, in the past, they've made bad decisions. They've been arrogant. Their decisions have led to destruction. And they kind of try to show that with the questline, with the whole mana bomb, and that there's almost a risk of a mana bomb going off again. But the fact is they haven't actually done anything particularly bad recently. And getting destroyed by Xal'atath isn't really their fault. The biggest mistake they made was they gave Dresden his job back without due diligence. And you could argue that's what led to the destruction of Dalaran. But they don't even talk about that so much. They just sort of make these vague comments about how we've been very arrogant and had the wrong attitude, and now we need to stop that. And I just don't really understand. I feel like they've reached this moment because that's where the story writers want to go with it, but they haven't actually explained it properly, and they haven't led up to it properly in the game. And it just comes across as a sort of random decision that they've made. It is still believable because, yes, in the wake of tragedy, people blame all sorts of reasons, and maybe this is how they decide that they're going to make sense of this tragedy. But that's still, it's not a very good, it's not very good. It's a reason. It's not a very good reason. It's not one that you can feel. And I have trouble believing it as well. I don't see the Kirin Tor changing too much. Maybe we'll have more Kirin Tor. We'll see them more around people instead of up in the sky. But I don't get it. That's the problem. I don't really get it. And I feel like they've got a lot that they could be explaining, that they could be, if they had done a better job with why Dalaran was destroyed to begin with, the story would work a lot better. So I'll see. We'll see how it goes. The other thing that really, really irritated me a lot is we put so much effort, a lot of people put so much effort into thinking who should replace, who should be on the Council of Six. I have to... Oh, never mind. Sorry, I thought I had to get the door.
Okay.
Who should be on the Council of Six? And now they've decided, Jaina and Kalek have time to come back and play major roles in the Kirin Tor again. What? Really? Why? Kalek just
because they're decentralized. Because she can be in Borealis, being the Lord Admiral, and still phone it in. Literally phone it in.
So it's a work from home scheme.
It's not a work from home scheme. This is Blizzard trying to get the narrative out there that flexible working, remote working is the way to go. Accomplishes more.
Well, we will see. I still think they need to build a flying city. And you know what? I don't actually... I really hope that what we see happen is similar to kind of what we just saw happen with the Alliance and the Horde. You mentioned the Alliance and Horde are at peace. But in the new short story, we find out that not all of the Alliance and Horde have gotten the memo. specifically in Stormgrad, there's the woman who was running the show there. She isn't anymore, but at the time, she was still like, "What are you talking about? The orcs are a terrible threat, and we are the descendants of Arathor." You know, she still sees herself as a Rathi, and that they're definitely sowing the seeds there for a faction of the Alliance that it's not the Alliance, but it's how the Alliance used to be. Like back in the day, when the Alliance and Horde were really, truly at odds, and there was no compromise, there was no peace. They hated each other, and they hated each other for good reason. A lot of people have complained that we don't have that conflict anymore. And that's because everyone's kind of turned into better people, which is good and all, but it makes the story boring. But there's this growing faction of Alliance who are that sort of old-fashioned. They believe in the light and they believe in humanity, and they hate anything that they see as a distortion of that. So they hate the Horde, they hate undead, they hate the void, and they can become a real threat in the future. And I hope that we see something similar happen with the mages. I hope that we end up with a faction of mages who are actually bad and who are extremely arrogant and who are basically the old Kirin Tor. But instead of being our friends, they're like a problem that we have to deal with almost. Or
like a fundamentalist faction that's like, no. This is what this was originally. It fell apart because we weren't this. You guys may have abandoned the dream of the Kirin Tor, but no, we're bringing back Dalaran, and it shall be New Dalaran, and it will be a raid with like 8 bosses.
Except I still want to make friends with them because I want a house in Dalaran. Floating Dalaran.
Okay, so little peek behind the curtain. I just had a sit-down conversation with Corey Missildine, who is a person who plays both World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, and we were talking about housing. So I have housing on the mind, okay? And so we'll have a little aside for this. I think that one of the issues that we have is where the hell do we put housing in a manner that will be social so that people will be able to, like, you know, see your house without having to be like invited to your party, right? Or even have it just integrated into the world. And one way of doing that, of course, is the Kel'Thuzad Pocket Dimension. That's where you have your house. That's one way of doing it. But another way is that your house is on its own little floating island. Now, we don't necessarily need the Kirin Tor for that. Nagrand already has those, so if you want a flying house without the Kirin Tor, maybe you put your house in Nagrand, which is also picturesque and kind of beautiful. And I'm being sold on it as I said it.
I've always wanted a house in Nagrand. Yes, please.
There you go. And you can have a little floating island house that's in Nagrand. Or the mages of the Kirin Tor not wanting to make Dalaran, but having the ability, could grant players who get houses their own plot that is floating in the sky. And guess what? If you want, you can take your floating cottage and teleport it to whichever city you want to have it based in. But obviously there'll be a cooldown on this and yada, 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 yada.
That's very cool. That's a really cool idea. It would be very funny if you
teleported in. That is so cool.
You teleported and it crashes. You get called
no! That would be horrible.
Just check that it's not goblin made.
But it'd be cool. They could do the same animation that they did in Legion and, of course, at the beginning of this expansion, where it's like, oh, you want to move your house? Okay. And then the mages are like, channel, channel, channel. And it's like, zip, and then reappears in the place. And they make it an entire cinematic.
So cool. That would be great. Oh my word.
But yeah, that's the kitty idea that I've stolen. You can steal it too, Blizzard. Nobody will sue you here.
Of course, we managed to take it back to player housing.
It's going to be on our minds for at least the next year.
I think people may as well just get used to that now.
And I'm personally, I'm not going to do much housing. But I love the freedom and the expression that it can give to players, so I am all for it coming to the game.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm going to do all the player housing. It's the only thing I'm going to do.
Well, there we go. When that comes out, our episodes can be from our player houses. Maybe we'll like remodel the player house based on like the bit of story we're telling. It's like, well,
man,
you
that'd
want to
be
hear
so
about
cool.
this skull that I have on my wall. Let me tell you the story about, I don't know, Xal'atath
wow.
at that point.
That is such a cool idea.
But
Anyway.
I think at this point, we've
Yes.
kind of run through our story, and I don't want this episode to go super long.
No, we're already 20 minutes over time, so we should probably wrap up here.
Okay. Where can people find you when you're not craving that player housing?
Well, I will always be craving the player housing, but you can find me on YouTube at Discordian Kitty. You can also find me on most social media. My favorite platform at the moment is Blue Sky and TikTok, at Discordian Kitty, across everywhere. And where can people find you, Manny?
Well, I definitely have jumped on that Blue Sky bandwagon. I don't know if I can say I jumped on the bandwagon. I was apparently one of the first 1% to do Blue Sky.
Oh,
They
wow.
gave me a little email. Yeah. So there you go. Oh, sorry,
Wow,
no,
good.
point, or was I 0.1%? Anyways, I'm part of the 1%, guys. I'm Richie Rich in Blue Sky. But you can find me there. You can find me on all socials over as TruVillainManny. That is true without the E. And I've been quite active lately on Blue Sky, and I intend to be active on other social media platforms soon as well. So do look for all the things that I do wherever you can find me.
Nice. And that is all for now. We will be back not next week, but the week after. And for now, hail Xal'atath.
Hail Xal'atath.